G'day guys, welcome back to the Rugby League Guru podcast. We are on the verge of round 26. The season is coming to the back end. September football, it is approaching rapidly. My favourite time of the year. Pretenders, contenders, we find out who they all are. Today's episode is brought to you by Neds. Jump on the app, follow along with all of my bets across the rest of the season, each and every weekend, along with Burmo, Eddie, all the boys from About Even there as well. Always good fun on the Neds app. Make sure you are gambling responsibly. Cat, today, we're going to go through the 9 teams that I think are in genuine contention to win a comp. Some of them probably hanging on by an absolute thread. But we're going to go through those 9 sides. And Kat's going to ask me 2 simple questions. What are they, Mandu?
Well, we'll tell you the team in order of the ladder, and then I just want to know why you think they can win and why you don't think they can win.
Very simple.
Very simple.
And some of them are very easy. Some of them are tough, depending on where you are on the ladder, what your position is. We're going to go through each and every one of them. For me, I mean, history tells us if you're outside the top 4, you probably can't win this premiership. And that's the harsh reality of it. I think the last team to win from outside the top 4, funnily enough, the Canterbury Bulldogs, 1995, who won from 5th place, I believe, which probably likely is where the Bulldogs finished this year. So a very, very interesting one there. The Canterbury Bulldogs that year, famously, Kat, they about 6 weeks before finals or something like that, their coach got them all on got them down to, I think it was a wharf down at Rose Bay, and it was like a Monday or something, and they thought they were going to training. He brought them down there, put them on a boat, filled it with alcohol, sent them out to the middle of the harbour and said, go and sort all your shit out and then come back. They didn't win. They didn't lose a game after that. They went undefeated. And they reckon they got out there and there was arguments and stinks, but they got everything sorted. They came back in. They didn't lose another game after that. Went all the way to the grand final.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, incredible stuff. Unbelievable story.
That would make a really good movie.
Oh, mate, I had Darryl Halligan, who was their goal kicking winger in that side. He came on the podcast about 2 years ago and told me the story on the podcast. Then it told it to me off the podcast as well, and it was. You could make a movie about it.
Wow.
Some of the biggest stars the game's ever seen just going toe-to-toe on that fucking boat. And they came out and just went, yep, we're good now. We've aired all of our shit. There's nothing to hide anymore. And, of course, our mate Jim Dimmick won the Clive Churchill medal that day, my boy.
Good.
We'll see. But I think you have to be in the top 4, which will obviously feature pretty heavily in today's episode. Kat, where are we starting?
We're going to start at number 1 with the Storm. So I want you to tell me why they can win and why they can't.
Look, the Melbourne Storm, they have all but locked up the minor premiership. They will not be featuring all their stars tonight, or only a few of their stars tonight. For me, there's a couple of reasons why the Melbourne Storm can win it. I look at the Melbourne Storm from an eye test this year and go, they're not playing anywhere near their best footy. And constantly people going, oh, you're too harsh on the Storm, you're critical, blah, blah, blah. And sure, maybe. But the way I look at it is that, and I stand by it, this team hasn't played their best footy yet. And they're first by a margin now. They're home with 2 rounds to go. I think it's the ultimate compliment that this team, I still believe they've got another level that they can go to. I think that Jerome Hughes has obviously been fantastic this year and he will continue to be fantastic for the rest of the season. But I think that Harry Grant's had his moments. I don't think he's put together a month of unbelievable footy like we know what he can do. I mean, Cam Munster, we're scratching the surface of what Cam Munster can do. Keep in mind, Cam Munster, this is the first season that he's been derailed like this as well. He missed Origin, which normally he has a point to prove in that, and he normally does. This finals, this is his absolute apex this year. Normally has Origin and stuff that he can enjoy. I think that they've got a number of players who are going to be really up at the end of this season. I'll tell you the other thing that I like about the Melbourne Storm right now, they're the fittest they've ever been this season. Everyone's available. Xavier Coates is going to be back in the next week or 2, I believe. They have got everyone back. Munster's there. They are able to pick their best side that they can. They've had a couple of guys that have jumped out of the ground, like your Grant Andersons, your Will Warbricks, your oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on the young centre's name, left centre, I'm forgetting his name. But they've had all these guys that have sort of jumped out of the ground that I think can have a huge, huge finish to this season. So, and I mean, the other big thing for the Melbourne Storm, and I think it's so critical when you talk about, we had a chat on Bloke in a Bar this week, is the salary cap working? And the argument against the salary cap was that there's only been 3 teams that have won the minor premiership in the last 10 years. They tend to be the 3 best coaches, though, and they've got Craig Bellamy in their corner. So a number of reasons why the Melbourne Storm can win it. I guess the other side's a little bit more interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, because I mean,
Jack Howarth, my God, I can't believe I just blanked on his name for 2.5 minutes. Forgive me for that. Take us away.
Forgive me for not interjecting. I guess it's the why they can't.
And I guess when you're talking about why they can't, people, I think, will get a little bit upset that you're being negative and whatever. And as I said, a reason why I think they can is because I don't think we've seen that top level yet. The reason why I can't is that I don't know what that top level looks like. I know what it looks like for the Penrith Panthers. I know what it looks like come September. And I especially know what it looks like for the Penrith Panthers forward pack come September. And that still is my question mark with this Melbourne Storm side. They've done incredibly well this year. They've beaten top sides. There's no doubting that. September football is a little bit different, and this team has to find a way to go to that next level. Now, I personally think they can, and I think they will, but there is still that question mark there. And I think people assume, going to the next level, it's easy to do. It's not. There's a reason why there's only been 3 teams in the last 40 years have won back-to-back comps, and only one's won 3 comps in a row. I know what I'm going to get out of Penrith come September, despite everyone doubting them and everything. I still think we still need to see that from Melbourne this year. The other thing for me, it's Melbourne's edge defence, and it's funny. Normally get to this time of the year and these sides don't really have a weakness. I think that right edge for the Melbourne Storm is definitely the spot you want to target with Nick Meaney, Jerome Hughes, Eli Katoa. They haven't quite got that sorted yet. Funnily enough, there's a few right edges in this competition that I'm a little bit hesitant about going into finals. But I think if I was playing the Melbourne Storm, that is the edge that I would be targeting. I'd be throwing plenty shape at them down that side. And the thing that makes it hard is when it's your right edge defense that's in trouble. It's the left edge attack going at you with, which traditionally teams tend to be able to attack better on their left edge because it's the natural way to pass right to left. So a lot of aspects that go into it, but those are probably the reasons why I potentially don't think the Melbourne Storm can win this competition. Who's next, Kat?
All right, who is next? Let's look at the Roosters next.
Roosters.
So tell me why they can win and why they can't.
Okay, so why the Roosters can win. I think their attack on their day is the best in this competition. I think that they are the hardest to predict. I think they are the hardest to prepare for. My big thing, and I said it on Bloke on Monday, and I haven't even had a look at the comments to see if there was a response to it or not. I watched the Sydney Roosters when they play anyone not named Penrith and Melbourne, and they play globetrotter footy. They move the ball around, they take risks, and yes, they concede points, but they score an absolute truckload. When I watch them in Perth on the sideline, some of the shit this team is capable of doing is just insane. But for me, when I watch them against Penrith and Melbourne, I think they get to those games and they go, all right, we're going to out Penrith and out Melbourne you here. We're going to grind. And I don't think it's the style that suits this footy side. I think that they need to show up and play against those top sides the same way they play against the bottom sides when they show up and they walk into a stadium with all the confidence in the world and go, nah, we just know we're going to out-football you.
Yeah.
I just think they need to change that approach. And I know that, that's history tells us that won't win in finals because the Penrith Panthers have won so long in this grindy style, so the Melbourne Storm. But I just think the Roosters have so much upside that they can play like that. I think they need to lean into it. And I think that, we've seen that whenever the Panthers or the Melbourne Storm lose games, it's when teams play a little bit differently against them. Like you have a look at the Parramatta Eels. They always worry the Penrith Panthers. Why is that? Because they offload the football at will. They play sideline to sideline. They take risks. Personally, I think the Sydney Roosters need to do the same. And I think that in order for them to win this comp, I think that's what they have to do. And it's why I think they can win this comp, simply because their attack is so good.
Yeah. So then with that, tell me why they can't win.
Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think their attack is fantastic. Why they can't, the thing that has worried me about the Roosters all year is, are they ruthless enough in defence? And are they just ruthless enough in general? Once again, I always refer back to that game I watched a couple of weeks ago that was against the Dolphins over there. The Dolphins were missing troops. They still scored 36 points against this side. And I stood there at the warm-up. I looked over at the Dolphins, 3 or 4 rep players standing over there, a heap of kids essentially. I look over at the Roosters, and the bench guys are better than most of the starting forwards for the Dolphins. And I go, in terms of rugby league, this team should absolutely slap this team 99 times out of 100. But the Roosters, I just don't think they have that ruthless edge to them right now. And it's very hard to just switch that on for 4 weeks. I think people talk about it like you can and you just show up and you can do it. The reality is, and if you have a look through the history of the game and the history of who's won premierships and everything, like the team that you are during the general season, it tends to reflect the team that you are at the back end. There are a few exceptions throughout time, but most of the time, who you are in the regular season is reflected come finals time. And if you have a look at the last few premierships, you'll see that that's very evident throughout all of those sides. For me right now, I'm just not convinced the Roosters have that absolute ruthless edge to be able to put teams away like the Penrith Panthers and the Melbourne Storm. But I think the way they've got to do it is just leading into their attack. I almost think they've got to defend with their attack. We're going to get you in a shootout where we know you're going to be uncomfortable. You don't like playing these styles of games, especially come September. I think the other beauty of this is that teams go into these games expecting grinding affairs. There's, the referee sort of swallows the whistle a little bit. They're a little bit tighter. I would just love to see the Roosters come out and go, nah, fuck yous. We're going to play different and we're just going to out-attack you. But their defense has to be there, and that is my big concern when I look at this Roosters side. Just are they ruthless enough in defense? You even go back to, I can't remember who the opposition was a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it was that Dolphins game again, or maybe it was the week after. But
what happened?
They threw 3 intercepts in the last 10 minutes, and you just sort of sat there and just went, did Penrith do that? Did Melbourne do that? And that's that and it sounds like a little thing, but that's that ruthless little aspect where it's okay. The options are you throw that intercept out wide, or you kick into the corner and you bury them down there. And
those intercepts are the difference between winning and losing.
Exactly right. And I know people will be going, well, hold on, that's contradicting what you're saying about playing your attacking style. In that game, they were up by 24 points. The game was over. They just had to manage it and be ruthless to the end. They had the points on them. It was kick to the corner, get down, defend, hold them down there. And they just, that was just something that worried me. It might have been against Parramatta. I can't remember exactly who the opposition was. But it's that ruthless edge that I just think the Roosters lack a little bit in their defense at the moment.
Interesting. Okay. Well, the next team is the third place on the ladder, and that is the Sharks. Why can they win and why can they not win?
Okay, so the Sharkies, why they can win. I personally think 1 to 17, the Sharkies are arguably the most balanced squad in this competition. When you have a look at if I said to you, who do the Sharkies have that is the best in their position? I don't think they have anyone that is, but I think they're all top 5 or top 6. You have a look through this squad. Probably the exception is Will Kennedy because there's so many superstars getting around right now in the fullback position. But you have a look at, I don't think anyone would consider Mulatalo, Katoa, Ramian, or Ito to be the best in their position of everyone. But on their day, can they match it with anyone? And on their day, can they beat anyone? Yes, point. Without a doubt. It's very rare that anyone gets the better of those guys. So, I have no concern. And I think as a 4, despite not being each of them the best in their position, I think it's probably the best outside back contingent of the teams that are left personally.
It would explain the third place on the ladder as well.
100%. I think it's better than Melbourne's outside backs. I think it's, as a whole, better than the Penrith Panthers outside back when you consider all 4 of them. The Roosters are maybe the one that I could argue or whatever, but I also think that defensively, a few of those Roosters boys have issues, whereas the Cronulla Sharks really don't. So I just think the balance in this side is incredible. The other real key thing for me is that Blake Brayley plays 80 minutes at hooker, which means that they can pick a 4-forward bench, which means that you're playing a little bit different to all these other sides. You can sort of stack a little bit more through the middle, which I think come September is going to be very, very important. So for me, I think the reason why the Sharkies can win is that their squad is incredibly well balanced. I think it's very, very well balanced. They've got to sort out the halfback jersey. For me personally, I would be going with Nico and Atkinson, and I hope that we see that this weekend. I assume we will. And the beauty about Atkinson, he might not be a star and he might not be the best in his 5'8" position, but he's a wild card. And you get to finals, and I've got, you look at the big halves in the competition, your Nico Hineses, your Cam Munsters, your Nathan Clearys, these sort of guys. I've got years of tape on these guys. Atkinson's still a little bit unknown. And I kind of like that. I've always liked Atkinson. I think he's got a lot to offer. He reminds me a little bit of Luke Metcalf in that he's a very talented player. He's hard to handle. And the hardest thing is you don't quite know how to prepare for him yet, which I like that little bit of X factor. And that's personally why I would go at Atkinson at 5'8".
It's so interesting. It's like you're suggesting, and I completely agree, that what people might see as their downfall is the fact that they don't have the best in every position is actually a positive because they have what you described as like top 5 in those positions, but also that unpredictability and look, I mean, I think people have really slept on the Sharks and look at them now.
Yeah, and I think that they don't have the ceiling of other teams, but their floor is so much higher than other sides in certain positions. Even the back rowers, like Britt Nicola, he doesn't play State of Origin, so no one talks. He doesn't get as much attention as he should. Teague Wilton's one of the best line runners in the competition. Cam McInnes, like he's obviously played Origin this year, but he's just always been sort of a plotter that's been well respected, but he's tough as nails. He's great come finals. And guys like Tommy Hazelton, Oregon Kafusi, these guys that aren't rep footballers yet that people don't talk about enough. Rudolph's been tremendous the last 6 weeks. So there's just a lot of good things going on with the Sharkies. Yeah.
Well, with that said, why can't they win?
I think this one's pretty obvious. Why can't they win? It's the monkey on the back. Can they win a finals game? They haven't the last few years. I've been critical of them at different points. I love this Sharky side. But you just have to get the monkey off the back. You have to overcome it. And for me, I don't think the Sharks will win a premiership this year. I don't think they're in that true conversation. I think next year is the year for the Sharkies. I think they'll be, with Adam Fanua and Blake arriving next year, just adds something a little bit extra. Ito with another year under his belt. I think Ramian's coming into his prime as of the outside backs. Another year for Atkinson to get used to playing with Hines. I think next year's the year, but I think what they in order to be a proper contender next year, Kat, I don't think they can spend 2025 going, oh, fuck, 3 years we haven't won a finals game. Are we able to overcome it? They have to win a finals game this year. They have to do it. I would assume week 1, they will probably have to play the Roosters or go down to Melbourne, which I actually don't mind. Like, the Sharkies have beat the Melbourne Storm down there once already this year. They haven't got a bad record down there. They will get a second bite of the cherry, which will take them to Shark Park. I was actually looking at it the other day. There is every chance that they lose week 1, which I wouldn't hold that against them. But then week 2, they'll come to Shark Park, and I reckon there's every chance they will have to play the Cowboys, who they played 2 years ago in the exact same game. They have to win that game. I think they just have to get the monkey off the back and win a finals game this year, because I think that if you go into next season with a record of, like, if they were to lose 2 finals games this year, they'd go into next season with a record of 0-5 in finals over the last few years, when they've been a very, very good football side. And then questions start to come in. I think, as you've seen with so many teams, you would know it with your South Sydney Rabbitohs, Cat, when you're winning games, no questions. When you're losing games, all of a sudden, everything goes wrong, everything's happening. And I just think there's a bit of pressure mounting on their halves in particular at the moment around Nico. I think it's unfair, but it's there. There's no doubting that. And I just think if they don't get a win in finals this year, you sort of start to enter areas of that sort of chokers tag, and that can be very hard to shake.
Definitely. Okay, let's move on. 4th place on the ladder. This came as a bit of a shock to some people because it happened very quickly. They were right at the top for so long this season. But the Panthers, the 3-peat champions of the NRL, how do you see them going? What is their reason for winning, and what do you think could be their downfall?
For me, Kat, a reason why they can't win, and I personally think emotion will overcome this, but it's just you got tired bodies everywhere. This team is going for their 4th premiership in a row, which is just unbelievable. The last team to win 3 in a row was in the 1980s. The Broncos, they won back-to-back in the early 90s. It took 30 odd years for another team to do that in the Roosters, which was an unbelievable side that signed Cooper Cronk in the offseason and just took him to another level. Like, in my opinion, they signed an immortal during the offseason at the end of his career when he's at the peak of his powers. It's so hard to do. And, the old saying, winning a premiership is like climbing Mount Everest, and then you got to come back down, then you got to do it again. And it's proven over a long time in rugby league it's incredibly hard. Like, you look at Craig Bellamy in the Melbourne Storm, Cam Smith, Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk, never went back-to-back, let alone 3, let alone even considered 4. It's crazy, and it's got to take a toll on your body at some point. There is no doubt in that. It has to take a toll on your body at some point, and the Penrith Panthers aren't going to win forever. They are going to have to fall at some point, and everyone's going to laugh at them. Everyone's going to give them shit. But I'll tell you what, if you can get back to 100 metres from the top of Mount Everest for a 4th time.
Incredible.
And you got to remember as well, before this, they lost a grand final too.
Yeah.
So
they've actually been in this position 4 times.
If they get into this grand final, that'll be their 5th grand final in a row. That's half a decade of being in the top 2 of the NRL. And, I mean, this is in the salary cap era too. Have a look at the players they've lost. Like, you could build a team out of the players they've lost over this 5-year period that they're probably a top 4 team. It is just incredible what this side has done. So tired bodies, I think obviously that will play a huge role. I think as well, Kat, just the fitness of Nath Cleary.
Yeah.
If he's fit and available. Saw Matty Johns the other day. He brought up a great point that this Panthers side has become a little bit complacent potentially in that, you look at the Dolphins game, you look at the Parramatta game a few weeks ago, they were down by 14-16 and then, Nath Cleary just goes 1-2 punch. Thanks for coming. I'll just win this game of football off the back of my hand. Whereas against the Canberra Raiders, they didn't have Nath to pull them back into it. They lost that game. Big upset. Nath will be there come finals if he's able to play every single game, which I hope so. I think he's still capable of doing that. But, you could even go back to a year ago when they won that grand final. If Nath isn't on the field, this 3-time premiership winning side all of a sudden is a 2-time premiership winning side because Nath wasn't able to engineer the greatest comeback probably in a game of football we've ever seen. So I think there are question marks over the Panthers. But as I said, I think a lot of the emotion will overcome that. Dare I say, I probably don't think I'm tipping the Panthers to be premiership favourites at the start of next season, though.
Interesting.
I think this will be the last big push.
Yeah.
And then I think you'll start to see a bit of change.
Wow. I like this. We'll see. Very interesting points anyway, and I'm sure anyone listening or watching would agree. We've almost potentially taken for granted just
we have
how
got
big
used to
the three-peat achievement is.
Yep.
Because it's like we're living through this Panthers dynasty, and it's only when they fall again that we'll realise how difficult it is to achieve this.
And I think the thing that makes it so that we're just getting used to it is that the Panthers seem to just do it so easily. It's the same script. Get September, we're going to turn up, we're going to turn it up. Are you able to do it? And no one else has really been able to do it. So, yeah, it's
You're going
crazy.
to match the Panthers freak. The next team, you mentioned them earlier as well. There's some great history behind this team, and we know how much this means to the fans already. They've made that very clear. But sitting in 5th place is the Bulldogs. I want you to tell me why the Bulldogs can win in 2024.
Let me start by saying not every team on this list I think can genuinely win a premiership. I think the Bulldogs are one of them. I genuinely think they can win a comp. I just think that it's not even that I think, it's reality. Defense wins premierships.
Yep.
If you ever look through, I think I did it at the end of last year. If you ever look through, I think it was the last 15 premiership winners. They've all been a top 2 defense. I think maybe outside the 2015 Cowboys. So I keep asking the same question, Kat. Why not? Why not Canterbury? They've got the best defense in the competition. They're granted on paper. I look at the forward pack and I go, they can't compete with the best. They seem to week in, week out, and I think that my reason for one of my key reasons why they can and why they can't are actually the same thing. I look at this Bulldog side and I think they're hardened for finals footy already. They've been playing finals footy all year. They're always in tight games. They're always relying on their defense, which is what's going to happen come finals time. And we'll get to the other side of that in a minute. But personally, Kat, I think the other thing that really plays in their favour is what you said before, the fans. The emotion and everything that's going to go with it. I look at how this season's going to play out for them. I think they're going to have a home final week 1. Week 2, I think they are going to they'll have to play the loser of one of the top 4 teams, which I personally think Penrith, I think Melbourne win week 1 in Melbourne, whoever they play. So the other 3 teams are Sydney. Canterbury fans are going to travel wherever they need to go.
And then they'll go back to Belmore to celebrate.
Exactly right. As long as they're playing in Sydney, which I think the only away trip I can see for them at any point throughout the finals is going to Melbourne on one occasion. I think that every game is going to feel like a home game for them. And that, you've been to a few of their games this year and whatnot. I've been to 2 of them this year, and I was there for the Parramatta game where Parramatta was seemingly on top the entire game, and you could just feel in that stadium, you just feel there was something special happening. And I don't think that can be slept on. I don't think that can be slept on at all. That you've got. I think it was the Seattle Seahawks back in the day in the NFL. They used to have. I think it's 11 players that go on the field or something, and they used to call the fan base the 12th man because that's just how much impact they had. And I look at the Canterbury Bulldogs and I see a very similar thing at the moment. So defense. And I think just their fans, I think it means that much to them, and the emotion's going to be that high that all these Canterbury boys, I just feel like they know what the sort of special path they're on at the moment.
Yeah, I think that they've done such a unique job of recruiting for this side to the point where you look at the lineup now and it feels like they've been together for years.
Yeah.
When in reality, you know, their captain only came in this season. He didn't even play last season with them.
Yeah, and the two captains before him also arrived that year. Like, you know what the other big thing is with Canterbury, similar to, I think it was the Melbourne Storm I said it about. They've done what they've done over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Like, I think they've won 5 or 6 in a row now. They've done what they've done.
I think they won 5 in a row for the first time in
Would have been years.
yonks.
Yeah. The big thing is, though, for me, when I look at them, and I know Stephen Crichton's out this week. He's obviously suspended. He'll be back next week. This is essentially their best squad. Max King's back now. We've always said, their middle's lacking a little bit. They've got Max King. This Harry Hayes has jumped out of the ground. We know what we're going to get out of Josh Curran. I look at him and I go, it might not be the greatest squad on paper of all time, but they've got the best possible squad they could have right now. And you look throughout this season, the amount of injuries and stuff they've had and changes at halfback. Josh Addo-Carr's missed a lot of footy. He's super important. Kickhouse missed footy here and there. Jacob Preston has missed long stretches. Jamin Salmon's missed long stretches. Kurt Mann's the only one that I'm thinking of at the top of my head that they're missing long term, and he's a huge loss. But once again, we all bagged him at the start of the year. Too many fucking utilities. How handy is it now? When you want to play the style of footy that they play, why not?
I know. Why not? They want it. They look like they want it the most.
Yep.
And sometimes that's all you need, right? Okay, now tell me why they can't.
All right. So for the same reason that I think they are finals hardened, that has to take a toll.
The fatigue.
Yeah. The brand of footy they play, I absolutely love it, and I respect the hell out of it because they're playing above what their salary cap represents. They're playing above what their team on paper represents, which is fantastic, and I love that, and it's what just inspires the fans so much. It has to take a toll at some point. It has to take a toll, and my only question with Canterbury is when they have to play top 8 teams 4 games in a row, because it looks like they won't finish top 4. So they're going to have to win 4 games on the trot. They're going to be absolutely exhausting. If they do get to a prelim final, they're going to be playing a top 4 team that's going to be coming off a week break and 2 weeks to prepare. They're going to have gone to war for an extra week. That's my only worry with Canterbury, and history tells us it is a huge concern that when you finish outside that top 4, you've got to win 4 games on the trot. You're playing teams that are well rested, teams that are well coached, well prepared. That's my big worry, along with the experience. They've got guys in this team that have won comps, Fox, Burton, Kickout, these sort of guys. But, you know, the coach hasn't been a head coach for a final series. The halfback hasn't been in a final series. Reid Marnie, I think he went to the grand final with Parramatta, obviously. But there's just they lack a little bit of experience compared to the Bellamys, the Clearys, even the Robinsons of the world. So that's my concern with Canterbury. But once again, on paper and just based on everything we know about rugby league, about having middle forwards and an experienced halfback, they shouldn't be anywhere near 5th place. They are. It's just the fatigue and the finals experience that I worry about. And they're another team that I look at. I genuinely think they can win a comp this year. I think they're one of the 5 or 6 teams that I can actually see winning it. I think they're at a low percentage, but I think they can win it. I think that next year is the one that with Shatili Tupanua arriving, I reckon they'll be able to go out and grab one or 2 other pieces as well. I reckon similar to the Sharkies, I think they just need to show what they can do in finals this year, and I reckon next year can be a big one for Canterbury.
Oh yeah, like they've rewritten their entire trajectory
this
season.
They have, yeah, but
there's still work to be done.
Yeah, there's work to be done, and there's also this Canterbury system feels different to me. But we said the same thing about the Cowboys after their top 4 season. They missed the finals the year after. We said the same thing about Parramatta after they went to the grand final. They missed the finals after. We said the same thing about the Warriors last year. They missed the finals after.
Souths too. I'm
Souths,
sure we've said the same
it took
thing
them
at
an
some
extra
point.
year for it to set in, but that did set in. And I'm not saying that'll happen to Canterbury, but every preseason I say this, history tells us that the teams that jump up a lot, they tend to fall back down the year after. Penrith didn't make the finals in 2019. They then jumped up and they stayed there. It's not impossible, but history tells us a lot of teams do. I personally think that this Canterbury system feels a little different, though. I don't know what it is, but it just feels different. I tipped the Warriors to miss the finals at the start of the season. I then flipped about 4 weeks into it, but I wasn't totally convinced the Warriors had completely turned around as a franchise. I think the Bulldogs have, but they still have to go out there and do it.
Yep. I love it. I agree with you. Okay, Cowboys sitting at 6th place. You've mentioned them a few times. They've got an interesting history under them as well when it comes to finals. So why can the Cowboys win in 2024?
I think simply just because of their attack. Tommy Dearden, Reece Robson, Scotty Drinkwater, Val Holmes, Murray Tuilagi, Kyle Felt, like Jeremiah, no one's even talking about it, but like he's a forward that I think he's 5th or 6th on the try scoring list this year. Like and literally no one's talking about it. It's fucking insane. If any other forward in the competition had scored 12 tries this year, there'd be calls for them to get Dalian back row or front row or whatever they were. Nanai's just an absolute fucking freak that no one wants to talk about. It's insane. It's their attack. Their attack on their day is the absolute. It's not the absolute best, but it's a top 3. And on their day, I think they are the hardest team to defend. So the Cowboys, they're a side that I would not want to play. I've got no interest in playing them whatsoever. I think the other thing that, from a finals point of view, as I said, you get to finals, you've got tape on all these halves, you know what to expect. 3 weeks ago when I was playing the Cowboys, I'm going, okay, halfbacks Chad Townsend, I got 10 years worth of tape on him. I know what his game is. I know what he's going to do. We've seen Jake Clifford play one game. He's then had a bye, and now he's got 2 games before finals, and he's the main guy. He's a ball running threat. He's got all that. Like he might not be the superstar of other halves in this competition. He might not have the credentials of other halves, but preparing for him is going to be very hard, and that's something that I see favouring the North Queensland Cowboys heading into this finals series, is that their attack is just so good that on their day, it can just be lights out in the first half.
Okay, now tell me why they can't win.
With attack comes defence. And this has been the worry for the Cowboys all year. And you have a look at, and like with all due respect to the Cowboys, some of their best defensive efforts this year and some of their best performances this year have come during Origin when all their stars are out. And they call on the replacements to come in. Like they beat the Roosters down here in Sydney. An unbelievable performance. And it was Sam McIntyre and it was Thomas McKaylee and these sort of guys. It wasn't the Cotters, the Nanais, the Robsons, all these sort of guys. But defensively, I don't know. I just worry about this Cowboys side, and when you have a look at like some of the best players in their team, Val Holmes defensively has been awful this year. He has been all over the place. I can't believe I've never seen a player, Cat, or not that comes to mind anyway, that has been so good in attack but so poor. Like they normally match up that you're playing good footy. Val can miss 5 tackles and go, that's all right, I'll make 3 line breaks. And it just doesn't, and it's that attitude that worries me with the Cowboys. And I think the person that personifies that the most is Scott Drinkwater. He can do whatever he wants with the ball. He's an absolute wizard. He can stack 30 points on you. But if there is a line break anywhere against the Cowboys, you might as well start lining up the conversion because you know Drinky's not going to stop it compared to other guys in this competition. I think that sort of personifies who the Cowboys are at the moment. They are all attack, and defensively it's just non-existent, which worries me going into finals. As we say, historically, defense wins competitions. When the Cowboys were absolutely, when the Cowboys were flying 2 years ago, Kat, they finished top 4. They actually, at this point of the season, they had a better defensive record than the Bulldogs do right now.
Wow.
And that's just gone completely out the window in the last 2 years. Attack is why they can win it. Defense, being ruthless, is why they can't. And I talk about the Roosters, how I don't think they're ruthless because I don't think they've got that extra 2%. I look at the Cowboys and they're fucking 30% off when it comes to ruthlessness. So I'd love to see it. But yeah, I would have the Bulldogs well and truly ahead of the Cowboys. But I would just like to point out, Kat, we did our contenders and pretenders about 12 weeks ago. And we had the Cowboys as just at the bottom of contenders. That's when they were in 11th or 12th place. And I don't know if you remember, but we got absolutely hammered in the comments about it. And now they've got a home final in the top 8. So good little call there by us.
I like
They're still
it.
hanging about. I like it.
And I get where people were coming from. There was a lot of fluctuation for
100%,
the
I
Cowboys
get
this
it, yeah.
season between 6th and 13th place or whatever you want to call it. But
this is how good their attack is.
this is where they are as well.
Yeah,
they
exactly
find
right.
themselves in the top 8. Okay, let's move on to the Manly Sea Eagles. Tell me why they can win in 2024.
Tom Trbojevic.
Should we just wrap it up there? Or
Well, it's kind of boring, but the guy is just a one-man juggernaut. And you know what? You have a look through that Manly Sea Eagles team, and I think there's a lot of guys that are having career best seasons, especially in their outside backs. They've been tremendous. Like for me, and we've already spoken about it a few times this week, for a guy like Kohler to miss their back line, like that just shows how well everyone's going. Like Lehigh Opawade, I remember standing in Las Vegas with Anthony Seibold talking about Lehigh, and he said to me, we've brought him over to Vegas for a bit of experience. I reckon he'll debut in the next 18 months or so. He debuted 15 weeks later. 25 weeks later, he's getting selected over Kohler.
Yeah.
It's
at fullback as well.
Well, yeah, and playing fullback. Like they were confident enough to move Turbo to centre at one point. And yeah, you're right. Sorry, he was being picked at fullback over Kohler.
Yeah.
Which is just phenomenal, unbelievable. I think, Brownie's had a fantastic season. Ola Kawatu's been great. Talia Paseka's come back 100%. I think Lockie Croker's a really important piece for them to get back just for how they build their side. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to Tommy Turbo. And you even saw, the Tigers at Leichhardt gave it to them the other day, and Tommy Turbo single-handedly kept them in that game.
Yeah.
Turbo, and then I would say DCE as well. These two guys together, they can beat anyone on their day. I think that they have beaten most of the top sides. Definitely beaten the Roosters, definitely beat the Panthers. I think they might have beat Melbourne. Don't quote me on that, but they definitely beat Panthers and Roosters this year. So they can beat those top sides. And if if we get to the end of the final series and we go, geez, who was the player of the finals? If it's Tommy Turbo, the Manly Sea Eagles have gone deep into this final series.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, now tell me why they can't.
Tommy Turbo. If you shut him down, if you defend him well, I don't know if they've got what it takes to compete on this big stage. And I think it's the most interesting watch of this entire weekend coming our way, Kat, is not only Manly versus Bulldogs, but just Tommy versus the Bulldogs. This is the best defensive team in this competition. Now, I think if Manly can walk away with a win against the Bulldogs where they play their brand of footy and they go sideline to sideline, they play their expansive brand, which I love what Manly do, I think they can take a lot of confidence out of this. On the flip side, if I'm Canterbury, I'm going, we just shut down Tom Trbojevic. We can shut down anyone.
Yeah.
I think that if you can shut down Turbo, I think you can shut down the Manly Sea Eagles. And I know that's easier said than done, but you have a look through the history of rugby league, and especially, just the Melbourne Storm alone. 2012 or whatever it was, Ben Barber goes on this incredible run. No one can touch him. No one can get near him. Gets to grand final day and the Melbourne Storm go, okay, we're going to take away plan A. Let's see what plan B is. Canterbury didn't have a response. 3 years earlier, Jared Hayne goes in this unbelievable season. He's playing touch football a year. No one can touch him. Melbourne get to grand final day and go, okay, what's plan B? Because we're going to take plan A away from you. And I just think you go up against your Panthers, your Melbourne Storm, which you're going to have to beat one of them, if not both of them, to win a comp. Are Manly going to have a plan B? Or is Turbo going to be good enough to overcome that, which is a big, big question mark. As good as he is, it's hard to overcome just a top quality defensive side. And we've seen some of the hottest hands in rugby league ever not be able to do that.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. I couldn't agree more that this Bulldogs Manly matchup,
it's huge
on Friday.
I don't think it's getting built up as much as it should be.
I mean, they're expecting attendance records to be smashed.
Yeah.
But I think more so to your point around the Bulldogs being one of the best defensive sides in the game. Manly, that's their weakness. We know they know how to score tries. It's not leaking them, but it'll be really interesting to see how they hold up against the Bulldogs in this matchup. And it has a finals-esque feel about it.
I'll tell you what, I would love to know. I would love to be a fly in the room in the NRL this week. I'm sure at some point the question would have been asked, can we swap the Bulldogs Manly game with the South Penrith game? Because one of them's an 8 p.m. game, one of them's a 6 p.m. game, and they're back to front at the moment. It's wild. I wonder if there was, and I imagine there would be a million logistics to it, but I reckon if they could redo this draw, you'd have the Canterbury Bulldogs and the Sea Eagles at 8 p.m. and the Panthers and Rabbitohs
Friday. 6 p.m. is so early on a Friday.
Yeah, it's Personally, I love it. Suits my lifestyle. But for most, very, very tough. But it's got prime time game written all over it.
It sure does. Okay, let's move on to 8th place Dragons. And we will be touching on, I do want to get your thoughts on Broncos, Dolphins and Knights.
Yep.
But let's go with the Dragons that are currently sitting in 8th place. Why can they win?
Look, personally, I don't think the Dragons can win a comp. But if they were to win a comp, I think you would look back and go, Shane Flanagan. He's got a bit of arsehole about him, which I love about Flano. He's a premiership winning coach. There's not too many of them in this league, realistically. There's not too many of them getting around in the top 8 as well. There is only 3 of them. Well, there's only 4 of them, including Shane Flanagan. I think that if they are to win this competition, the Dragons are going to have to show up every week and be gritty, kick to their corners, defend well, man up for each other. And I don't know, there's not many guys in rugby league that can get a better response out of sides than Shane Flanagan. He loves big games like this. He loves dragging teams into the gutter. That's how he won a premiership with the Sharkies. That team would just drag teams into the gutter and go, nah, you're going to play our style of footy in this game. And it was successful, and they did it to the Melbourne Storm. They did it so well to the Melbourne Storm that at the end of the 2016 season, Craig Bellamy went, okay, we need to change up everything that we do. They came back in 2017 and they're honestly a top 3 best attacking team I've ever seen, because that Sharkies team just showed the Melbourne Storm that we can now out-gutter you. It is possible to out-Melbourne Storm the Melbourne Storms, and they flipped their game and they came back in 2017, and it's one of the most dominant seasons I've ever seen. Absolutely blew teams away. Shane Flanagan, he's the reason why I think they can possibly.
They do have that experience in there. And you mentioned, that's what the Bulldogs, for example, don't have. But
yes,
they do have it.
Yeah, and I just think Flano, I don't know what you want to call it. I would call it like a siege mentality. He can just build that aside.
Yeah.
And that matters.
Flano goes to war.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Why can't they win?
Consistency. We said it before when we're talking about the Bulldogs. You're going to have to win 4 games in a row, mostly away from home, or the Dragons are going to have to win every game away from home against top sides that are well rested and ready to go. At the moment, the Dragons, you wouldn't really back the Dragons to beat 4 bottom 8 teams in a row, because they're win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. It sounds very simple, but, the writing's on the wall. It is consistency with the Dragons, and it's the reason why I don't think they will go further than week 2 of the finals.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I want your thoughts on the Broncos as well. Broncos sitting in at 9th place. They're on equal points with Dolphins, Knights and Raiders. But talk to me about the Broncos. Why do you think they can and can't win?
Yeah, look, if I had to draw a line where I don't believe they can possibly win a comp this year, it's at the Dragons and below everyone else. The exception I would put in there is the Broncos if they just get a hot hand, because this team is just so talented. I don't think they can. I don't think they will. I reckon there's every chance they just miss the 8 altogether, because I think the Melbourne Storm beat them next week. But this Broncos side, it's their ceiling. The ceiling is just so high, and if they get everyone back and they've got Adam Reynolds fit and going, Paddy Carrigan, Payne Haas, I know all those guys aren't fit and available right now, but if they do get them all back, I think they could give it a shake. I don't think they can win it. But personally, when I have a look at Broncos, Dolphins, Knights, Raiders, I think the Broncos are the team most likely to win a comp out of nowhere out of all those teams. But yeah, I mean, it's just the squad for the Broncos that is so good. They've underachieved all year. They've been complacent. They don't respect the football enough. I don't think they can, but I think they are just worth a shout. That out of all these teams, they probably are the best hope, simply because of their squad.
They're stacked.
They're so stacked.
They're so stacked. It's like it almost feels like so much wasted potential.
It doesn't feel like it is wasted potential.
Yes,
it's bullshit. Yeah. As far as why they can't, the Broncos, if they were to win a comp this year, like I look at, as we just spoke about with Canterbury, for them to win a comp this year, they're going to have to win 4 weeks of sudden death finals footy.
Yeah.
The Broncos have been playing sudden death finals footy for 6 weeks. It's going to be 10 weeks of finals footy. That's after they climbed Everest and then had to come back up, which, once again, have a look at how good that squad is. That shows you how hard it is to be able to do it. I just don't think the Broncos have got what it takes, but I think they deserve a little bit more of a shout than other sides.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's quickly run through the Dolphins, Knights and Raiders. Can you just give me a point on each? where you think that they're going to end up and I suppose what the chances are there. I think Dolphins were in the top 8 for a large portion of this season, so it's a bit of a shame to see that they've dropped to 10th place, but talk to me about that.
I'll tell you what, though, with the Dolphins, honestly, at the start of last season, if you would have said to me we were 2 years in and we were disappointed to see the Dolphins finish 10th, I would have said that's fucking unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you no one, not a single person had them anywhere near a top 8 side at last season. At any point did anyone expect them to be there. So I think full credit to the Dolphins. I think it'll be very interesting now with Wayne leaving, obviously. We've been up there. We've seen the facility. We've seen how they function. They're doing everything they possibly can up there. They're doing good things. I wouldn't be surprised if you see one last push this weekend for the Dolphins to try and end the Broncos season, for Wayne just to give one last fuck you.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think they'll be able to go to Newcastle next week and beat the Knights on a Sunday arbor up there. I hope they can, but I'm just not convinced they'll be able to. So I don't have the Dolphins in there. Who's next? Knights?
Knights.
I don't mind their chances to finish in the top 8. They've got 2 games that I think they win at home in Newcastle. I think this game this week is the danger game for them. They take on the Gold Coast Titans, who've had their pants pulled down the last few weeks. They're without Tyson Frizzell, Kai Pearce-Paul, a couple of injuries there. They get Bradman Best back, which is fantastic. But I think people consistently sleep on Tyson Frizzell and how important he is to this Knights side. I think that they have got the best chance of making the top 8 out of Broncos, Dolphins, Knights, Raiders simply because of their draw. But I personally don't think the Knights are playing that well. I think that they're coming up against some pretty bang average opposition that is covering a lot of issues there at the moment. Who's last?
Raiders. The Raiders, the kings of the upsets at the moment.
Fucked if I know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
They'll play tough. They'll play gritty. Results are going to have to go their way. Honestly, if we get in 3 weeks' time, we're watching the Raiders play top 8 footy, I'll be like, fucking of course the Raiders made it.
Yeah.
Of course, every other team stumbled and these guys that are just like cockroaches just held on for their dear life and found a way to get there. If the Raiders make it to finals footy, similar to the Dragons, I can see them just having one last push to win one game.
Yeah.
2 games in the finals, I think it's just out of reach for the Canberra Raiders. Similar to all these sides, I can't.
Would you also say that the Shane Flanagan effect for the Dragons is also what the Raiders have, which is Ricky Stewart?
I agree, yes. Yeah. But once again, doing it 6 weeks in a row, not a hope in hell. You can maybe do it for 2 or 3. I think that Elliott Whitehead retiring, I think that'll mean a lot to them. I don't know what's going on with Jordan Rapana. They might know within those 4 walls that they're farewelling him as well. I'm not too sure, but I think Elliott Whitehead, there'll be a big lift for them. But they play the Roosters this week. I can't remember who they play next week. I reckon for those reasons they're a serious sniff of an upset this week over the Roosters. But then doing it next week against the Dragons, playing for their season up here, so their games in Canberra are done. It's going to be tough. But once again, if the Raiders win these 2 games by 2 points and they're in the 8, I don't think anyone will be surprised.
Yeah.
But similar to Dragons and these other sides at the bottom, I don't think they're a serious threat to give it a shake this season.
Cool. Well, that's it.
I thoroughly enjoyed that.
I've got something in my eye.
Yeah, I've noticed your eyes been
I look
giving
like
you a
I'm
hard
crying.
time.
I've turned the camera off me.
Guys, thank you for joining us once again here on the Rugby League Guru podcast. Today's episode brought to you by Neds. Gamble responsibly as always and jump onto the Neds app to follow along with my bets and all the About Even boys bets for the rest of the season. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts were, if I was too harsh, not harsh enough, where you disagree, where you agree, maybe some points I made you think about a little bit differently. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts were on this episode.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website